lot of businesses that I speak to don't realize, when a solicitation is put out online, that's the final step of a government's thought process when they're buying something. So you really want to be talking to them before even that solicitation is put out online. That is the reactionary step. You see it online, you apply. You want to kind of know in advance when that solicitation is coming out. And that's through communication with the agency and talking to them and understanding their buying cycle and understanding what they need and when they need it.
So that's a really good point. So let's dive a little bit deeper. We're going to talk about government contracting again, continuing our series, trying to help businesses win those contracts.
Right.
We've talked about bonding. We've talked about MWBE certifications. We've talked about all of the other certifications. We've given the 101 class, the introduction to it. And now we're going to dive a little bit deeper. We're going to talk about marketing.
Yes.
Marketing to get your government contracts. So this can be counterintuitive for people because how do I market to the government? So let's start with a super generalized, broad question of, Lauren, how do I market to the federal government? And I guess part of it you can break down into how is it different than marketing otherwise, if it is?
Right. So that is our main point. It really isn't that different. Of course, there's going to be differences. This is a different customer set than your private customers. But the government is made of people, and people have motivations, they have agendas, they have ideas of what they want, they have past experience with other contractors. So that's what I want to reiterate is that the government is full of people.
Right.
And so we want to treat them as such. They are customers. And so we want to market to them as we would any other customer. Now, of course, there's different ways to do that. The government is a huge marketplace. So we want to be a little bit more targeted. And that's what we're going to talk about today is how to really get to the people you need to get to when you want to market to the government.
That makes a ton of sense. A lot of times when people start talking about government procurement, it gets a little esoteric in that it's like you're removing that human element from it. And you're like, oh, this is an agency. This is government bureaucracy and it's huge. And, how do I market myself to an agency, to a government body, and it's like, well, it's not like you said, it's people.
Yeah. And a lot of people or a lot of businesses that I speak to don't realize, when a solicitation is put out online, that is like that's the final step of a government's thought process when they're buying something. So you really want to be talking to them before even that solicitation is put out online. That is the reactionary step. You see it online, you apply. You want to kind of know in advance when that solicitation is coming out. And that's through communication with the agency and talking to them and understanding their buying cycle and understanding what they need and when they need it.
So that's a really good point. So let's dive a little bit deeper into that. So how does somebody start that dialogue? How does somebody break in and start establishing relationships with people at government agencies?
Yeah. So the government, as we talked about before, there's federal, state, city, counties, villages, and in those spaces, there can be, like in the federal government, there's, thousands of government employees that work for the government. You can't be marketing to all of those agencies, all of those people. It's just too large. So you really want to be a little bit more targeted and figure out, first of all, are you going to be selling to federal, state, city? Who's your primary target? And within those spaces, which are the agencies you want to speak to? Which are the agencies that are your biggest buyer? And that way, instead of now reaching out to 50 different agencies, you're looking at 3 to 5, maybe 8 that you are going to be reaching out to and learning all about, doing a deep dive into their websites and really learning all about how they buy, what they buy, who are the people, the decision makers in that agency, what kind of events that they're having that you can go out and meet them, because all of these agencies have events that they go out into the community and they meet with different vendors.
Absolutely. No, that's definitely that's a powerful thing, is to dive into, understand who are you selling to. We spoke about this before in a previous podcast where we talked about identifying your target market.
Right.
And so this is the same exact thing. You're identifying your target market through the government. What government agency at what level is buying what you want? And to take into consideration, where are you at in your business's journey and development?
Exactly.
What kind of work can you handle? Maybe you don't want to start at the federal level because that's kind of big.
Yeah.
Like they're doing big projects.
Yeah.
And so look at the village that you're in, look at the city that you're in, figure out what, like they usually post. I mean, I think they have to post publicly whenever they're having their kind of town hall meetings or their sessions and things like that. Like start getting involved on that level.
Right.
And then you can start to get an idea of what is going on. Like
Yeah.
what are the upcoming projects. And like you said, you don't have to wait for those events, go online.
Right. And every agency on the federal, state, city level, for the most part, have people responsible for meeting with small businesses.
Interesting.
So when you go on a website, like a federal agency website, and you type in that agency name and small business on Google, usually the first link that comes up is their small business page.
Wow.
And you can go in and see who are the small business staff for that agency, what events are they having, and then they usually have more information on how they buy, what they buy, and their agency mission, what they're looking for in a vendor to fulfill that.
What would you say would the Chamber of Commerce have be like a good resource to tap into that since they're already kind of connected, they're a city body.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that would be a worthwhile endeavor to get enrolled and to register to become a part of your Chamber of Commerce? And would they be able to assist in identifying some of that information for you as well?
I think Chamber is just a tool in the toolkit where you can meet with different businesses. The chambers are connected to the town. Mm-hmm. And so they would have those connections usually. The different business leaders would have connections to the towns. So they're just one tool in that toolbox to use for networking and learning more about your local community.
Yeah, because it's so much easier to start a dialogue with somebody. It's the idea of cold leads versus warm leads.
Right.
And so if you have somebody that's an intermediary between you and the person that you really want to speak to and communicate with about the business and opportunities that government body might have, having somebody that knows, like you talked about, the people on the inside, and they can make an introduction on your behalf, that's huge.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's all you need to really get going.
Definitely. And, talking about people, these government agencies, when you apply for a contract or you're speaking to a government agency at a marketing event, they're going to be looking at you. They're looking at your marketing materials. They're looking at your website. They're looking at your Facebook page and your reviews. Mm-hmm. So, you want to make sure that that's all really buttoned up, looks professional. Your email address is professional. Everything has to, just like any other customer, the government's going to be looking at you as someone that they're bringing into their, not home, but like their home, their office. You're going to be, if you're going on site, they want to make sure you're reputable, you have good reviews, and everything looks professional.
So you're saying that Yahoo and Gmail email addresses are not the preferred method for your business.
Not only that, it's becoming more of a security issue as well, right? They don't want, just a random email. They want to make sure that you have, especially with the government, you have cybersecurity measures in place, you have a secure server, you have things that are protected.
Right. And the beautiful thing is now, like you talked about, having a website that's established and up and running and looks professional. I think a lot of this comes back to a level of excellence. Right. They always talk about the, dressing for the job that you want, not the job that you have.
Yes.
And so it's the same thing. You have to think about all of your marketing materials as dressing for the job that you want, not the job that you have.
Exactly.
So you may be, I always go back to like the military expressions, like the knuckle dragging, rough and tumble startup. But how do you want to portray yourself? Like, what kind of contracts do you want to win? Who do you want to work with? And then think about, everything goes back to being client centric, customer centric, and like, what is their perception of you?
Right.
What are they experiencing? What kind of feeling do they have when they go to your website?
Exactly.
It's like, oh yeah, you created this 30 minutes through like a drag and drop kind of a situation. Right. Or like, wow, this is nice.
Yeah.
So that can make a huge difference.
Right. And also like having a capability statement. that's kind of a standard for government agencies. And so if you go into an event or you go into a meeting and they ask you for a capability statement and you're like, what is that? That is
It's an
telling,
indicator.
right?
It's an
It's an
indicator.
indicator. So having a capability statement, a one pager on your business with all of your NAICS codes, your registrations, if you have any certifications, your core services, you can easily Google, how to create a capability statement, or your local SBDC can help you.
And we're going to shoot a full episode that's just on capability statements. So if you want a full walkthrough breakdown with example, we'll have that for you coming shortly.
Yes. So I know agencies that won't meet with a vendor unless they send them their capability statement.
Absolutely.
So
it's
like
like
a standard.
it's like a short form resume of your business.
Right.
For government contracting.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
Yeah.
So how do some of the other marketing strategies that people like to go to, and even in addition to marketing strategies like brand awareness and brand building strategies, how do those kind of apply? I'm thinking more along the lines of online presence, social media presence, and things like that. How applicable do you think that is in the government contracting space?
It's definitely applicable. I mean, like I said, people are people. Agencies are made of people. So if you're a thought leader and you're posting on LinkedIn and you're posting on X or Twitter or whatever it's called now, people see that and they say, "Oh, okay, he or she knows what they're talking about," right? So, do what you're doing with the private sector in terms of also doing it with the public sector. Have some of those government contracting focus posts, focus on the government. Make sure that your social media reviews are all excellent. Another thing that the government's going to be Googling you on. Having your capability statement online on your website.
Brilliant. Yeah, it's not something that you should be hiding or restricting.
Right.
That should be obvious. This is something that you want people to see.
Right. And it signals to the government, okay, they know that we're going to be looking at them, or they know that we need this.
It's like speaking the language. It's understanding the, like, even inside of different industries, there's different jargon, there's different lingo that's used. And so you need to understand what some of that government procurement lingo is, and a capability statement is like baseline 101.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I think it's, again, this keeps going back to just like understanding who your target market is, because and it's the same thing both on the private and public side. If you're creating social media content that's meant to expose people to your level of expertise and things like that, and the type of solutions that you provide, those solutions should be geared towards towards your target market. Like, what are their problems? It's not really, it's about your solutions, but it's about what problem you solve.
Right.
And the more complicated the problem, the more difficult the problem is to solve, the more valuable your work is.
Right.
And it's important, like, you have the different types of strategies when you're posting online, like you were talking about, where you're doing kind of public sector focused, private sector focused. But you like, there's also just pure kind of brand awareness and sharing valuable insights.
Right.
That's a huge way to garner attention and a following in the larger, and it's, as you can call it, unfortunate or fortunate or just reality. Like, the bigger your following is online, that's credence, that's social proof.
Right.
And so it's important to consider that if you're going to use social media as a primary means of communication, which, I mean, it's one of the cheapest ways to get it done, then you have to think about that.
Right. Right. And also events, going to these government contracting networking events is really important, because that's also another way to translate you're focused on government contracting, you're focused on your customers. A lot of these agencies, they have networking events, or they have webinars or virtual meetings where you can talk to them. And that's a way for you as a business to learn more about that agency, what they need, when they buy, and have better insight into your customer as you're creating a proposal. You can speak to that.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. I don't want to like keep going back to social media. So go figure, like, I'm going to do that. But when you're going to an event like that, you're going to the place that other people are going. It's like you're going to the same watering hole that the people that you want to speak to are going to. And so if you extrapolate that and you put it into like the social media world, you want to figure out what does the organizational chart look like for the type of agency that you're looking at. If you get real specific, find the agency that you want to work with, the one that you've been able to do research. You have found that they buy services from other businesses or products from other businesses that you also provide. And then spend time researching. LinkedIn is so powerful for this. Spend time figuring out who isn't, like, you can go to their website, figure out who the organizational chart is, find the people, take that, find it in LinkedIn, and then you find out where are their digital online watering holes.
Right.
Like, what groups are they a part of? What organizations are they a part of? Where are they an alumni from? You know, and you can use this information to help build a relationship with these individuals, and you can connect with them in a way. Like, it's one thing to send an email out to either a generalized email address for a government agency, or even attempting to swing for the stars and go for, you know, I don't know, head of procurement for them, versus you seeking to connect with them in a place where they can immediately go and look at your profile. They can see the content you've been producing, and then they can make a value judgment based on that.
Yeah.
You know,
and that's why it's really important to narrow down your target, because that, to me, that's a lot of work, right? Going into a LinkedIn profile, trying to figure out who's who in the agency. You can't do that with 50 different agencies.
Exactly.
That's why you want to narrow it, because you should be doing that, but narrow it down to 3 to 5. And it's really easy in the government sector because all of this information is public.
And to link back the social media to what you were talking about, the in-person events, sometimes the best way to find out about where these people are going to be is on social media. Because if they're going to go there and they're going to speak,
right,
like, they're going to be promoting that on their social media profiles.
Right.
And then you can go there, go register for the event. I mean, there are other ways to do it too. I know in New York State, there's the contract reporter, New York State contract reporter, and on that site they have a list of upcoming events, upcoming conferences, and things like that. And so, I mean, I've done this where I've created Google alerts, you know, for my particular industry and events that are happening around that in my area.
Yeah.
So you can do that through Google, where it's just like whenever an article pops up that's talking about, and you use keywords, and then, I mean, that's a whole class that we'll have to do.
Yeah.
You know, outside of this. But yeah, so yeah, you don't, I would never encourage, I keep going back to social media, but I'd like to think of it just like when we were talking, you were speaking about the Chamber of Commerce and it being a tool. Social media is a tool.
Exactly.
Like, and it shouldn't be your end all be all. Like, use it as a way to, because at the end of the day, again, to your brilliant point of, like, government agencies are built of people.
Right.
Use it as a way to genuinely connect with people, and use it as a tool to figure out what's going on. What are their priorities? If you're seeing posts from them and their side about their business and, like, the different initiatives they have, that's insight.
Right. Right. Exactly.
So if somebody is just getting started in this space, and they want to consider how, like, what they, maybe they've narrowed down their target audience. They figure out who they want to sell to. Maybe it's like local schools in their district, and they have a landscaping company. We'll go with that kind of example. What are some best practices, or what kind of recommendations would you make to a business in that position that's like, I'm ready to do this, but I don't want to, like, market it, put the wrong foot forward? And so I know that you kind of dove into this a little bit with, you know, making sure that your materials and your presence is, like, done professionally. What are some good examples or bad examples of people doing that, or what other tips would you have for somebody?
Yeah, I think, like, trying to make that initial connection, especially if they have a small business office, you know, that is your first point of contact. So when you identify your target agencies, you want to go on their small business website and really understand who is there to meet with you, because that's their job. Their job is to meet with small and certified companies. So that would be that they're expecting that. So that's an easy.
That's huge.
That's
it's
easy.
a door. It's a gateway.
Right.
Like, use the door.
Right. It's there for you. And that would be my first step. Some people are more responsive than others, of course, as we are all people.
Yes.
So some small business officers you're going to immediately connect with, others you may not. Maybe you're going to connect with someone at an event from that agency or from their procurement office. So I would say, first step would be small business office. And then from there, move into the other people in the agency. And the small business office can connect you with other people in those agencies too.
What type of what should you have ready when we're thinking about kind of marketing material and you're like, okay, I found it. I'm going to speak to this person, but I want to make sure that like my resources are ready. What are some of the things that, I don't know, maybe people wouldn't think about, or just some basics that you should really have put together before you do this initial outreach?
For government, the capability statement is like the number one thing. And you can prepare a presentation following your capability statement. The capability statement has sections, and you can go through, it's called a capability meeting, where you're giving them your capability statement and then you're going through each section and expanding on it. So that's like an easy kind of outline of how a meeting should go with a government agency.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. And so you should really be spending time, if it's just you or if you're going in with like a business partner, you guys should really invest time into, one, making sure that your capability statement is on point, it's accurate, it's up to date. But you also, it's not like you have to script it, but you should have at least an idea of like, how are you going to discuss this?
Yeah.
And again, I always go back to being like, you need to be client centric. And so it's about your capabilities. The statement is about what you can do, but that statement's incomplete. It's not about what you can do. It's about what you can do for that agency.
Right.
And so everything, when you're talking about the capability statement, and even if you're going to reference, because there's a previous work section in it.
Correct.
So even when you're there, like you might even curate, you tell me if this is right or wrong, for the agency that you're going into, I'm going to shift that up. If I have a list of work and, if I'm looking at local schools in this district, I'm not going to put the construction job I did for the highway or whatever, like I'm going to try to pick the ones that are most relatable, so that way I can tell stories.
Exactly.
Like this is the problem that we solve for them, which I think is really similar to what you guys have going on. And I'd love to be a part of the solution.
Exactly. Because you're not only signaling that you can do the work through your past work, but you're showing that you understand what they need.
Yes.
So it's doubly important to think like that, to think about what you've done in the past and how it relates to the work you want to do in the future for that agency.
And so I think we've touched on this in some previous podcast episodes, but how would you recommend people figure out what they need? Like what these different agencies need, so that you can really curate this in the most effective way?
Yeah. So like I said, everything is online in terms of what the government has bought in the past. So that would be my first step, is like going on usaspending.gov, putting in your NAICS code and seeing who buys in that NAICS code. And then you're going to pick the 3 to 5 agencies that buy the most and do a deep dive onto their websites. Go into their websites, look at what their mission is, look at what kind of projects they're working on, look at them in the news, see what's going on in the world with that particular agency. And that's going to inform you, at least superficially, on what they need. Then when you're going to events, you're meeting with them, you're talking to them, you're understanding, personally what they're going through.
You just gave me an epiphany.
Yeah.
You gave me an epiphany. This is beautiful. I love this. Why I love this podcast. It's so selfish. I get so much knowledge from this. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So you want to treat, as a parent, I'm coming at this from this perspective. You want to treat your potential client, the business that or the agency that you're looking at learning more about, you want to treat them like your child, like your kid. I want to know, like, when if they're putting something online and they're like sharing it and like this achievement that they did, I'm like, oh my God, that's like, you didn't tell me about that. Like I want to know, like, I didn't know you got an A on this test or whatever. And so like, you want to treat them like they're your child. Like you want to put in a genuine sense of like care and interest.
Right.
And so if you put that mindset on, like, oh yeah, you're like, or like somebody that you love and care about, because essentially you're looking to form a relationship with them. And that's important, because it's hard to understand what's important to them and what are they trying to accomplish if you don't really care about it.
Yeah.
Like you can go through it through an analytical way, and if that's the way that you process information, then great, but if you're having a hard time being motivated to spend all this time in research, we talk so much about research and how important it is, but that's how you find the agencies that are a better fit for you.
Yeah.
Because as you're going in and looking into it, like, maybe this isn't a good fit.
Right. There may be some agencies that like culturally just don't match with what you do.
And you may have thought that they were a good fit because of their generalized kind of mission statement and what you do for your business. Like, obviously, this is going to match. And then when you actually look into it, you're like, oh, that's not where your priorities are. Like what I'm doing is not where you're focusing.
Yeah.
And how much time would I have wasted? How much energy would I have wasted going into these capability meetings? To discuss this.
Yeah.
So that can be problematic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what's great about some of these events that the agencies go to is, like, for example, in New York State, they have an MWBE forum. And that's where all of the state agencies, they're required to go to this event. Wow. So in one day, you're meeting with all the agencies you need to meet with, talking to them, and really having a better understanding of where you need to focus. So that's the kind of events you want to go to, at least in the beginning, where you're really kind of meeting a lot of different people and you're understanding where you fit in.
I love that you brought this up, and it spurred something that I speak with my clients about all the time, and it's how to prepare for these events. Like, what kind of mindset should you go into it with? And I think a lot of it's dependent on where you're at in your business.
Yeah.
There are a lot of clients that I speak with. They're like, I'm not ready to do business with them yet. I'm like, you have to go. But you go there with a notepad.
Right.
You go there with your phone.
Learning.
And you're taking pictures. You're paying attention to how the other businesses are interacting with the agencies.
Yeah.
You're paying attention to what answers the agencies are giving. And you can come up with a list of questions that are relevant that you would want to know for when you're at the next stage.
Right.
So do you have any, I meant to ask that as a question, then I just went on a diatribe. No, what other ways would you recommend that people get prepared to enter into an event like this?
Yeah.
And you could take it from any sort of like business stage that you want.
Yeah. I mean, overall, I would say there's so many different events, right? And they all have different cost structures, or if you travel. So you really want to make sure it's worth your time. And that could mean whatever it means to you. If it's just for learning and you want to meet with as many agencies as possible, go to one of these large events, where you're meeting with agencies from all over. Great. But if like you're at a point in the business where you want to meet with 3 agencies and these are the only agencies you want to work with, then don't waste your time going to just events just to go.
Yeah, right.
You want to go to events where those agencies are going to be, or there's a particular person is speaking and you want to get access to that person. So be very intentional, like at least know where you are in your business and what you're looking to get out of that event, because I just don't want businesses to spend money unnecessarily.
Right.
Traveling to Las Vegas or traveling to to DC, wherever it is, wherever a conference is, and then you're going, you're like, well, this is not for me at all.
Right.
Like I didn't.
How much value did I actually get from this? Is this actually moving the needle with the business?
Right.
Not?
And sometimes it's a learning experience, right? You're like, actually, this event wasn't worth it. I'm not doing this again. And that's fine too.
Yeah. And I think it's important if you're going into it from a perspective of learning, then you really want to put a focus on networking.
Yeah.
Like even if it's not in your wheelhouse, if you have somebody that works with you that's more sociable, that's more gregarious, like bring them and have them communicate with people as well. But also, just understand that that's a huge priority for you at that point, and to put yourself out of your comfort zone a little bit and go and introduce yourself to people.
Yeah.
Prepare at least an outline, some bullet points. I think that this is the best way to do it. If people are going to ask you, what's the most common question that gets asked? What do you think at a conference? When you're speaking to somebody?
Well, that's a good point. You want to have your elevator pitch,
exactly,
right?
Exactly.
What do you do?
What do you do? Yeah. What's your name? What do you do? And most of the time you have a name tag on. So they're like, oh, hi, John. What do you do?
Yeah.
And so if you're not prepared with, I love the idea, like I said, of bullet points. Like you don't necessarily want to script it out because you want to keep it somewhat flexible to be able to answer in a way that maybe even geared a little bit towards who you're talking to.
Right.
And so if you just have the generalized, like these top 3 things are kind of what drive the business. Oftentimes what I do is I flip it back. I'll flip it back and I'll inquire. I'll ask a question back of them, you know, and then that way I can gear my question, or I just try to ask it first, you know, 'Cause then you figure out with them. And that's part of the thing about putting that mindset on of how do I want these engagements to go? Like, okay, well, if I ask first, then I get to know what they do, and then I can relate what I'm doing to them, and we can establish some sort of rapport and relationship.
Right.
Because you never know who the people that you're speaking with, who they know and what type of work that they've done with other agencies before.
It's all about connections.
100%. Yeah, no, that's really powerful.
Yeah.
So, okay, we've tackled some online social media stuff. We've talked about in-person events. I'd say one of the most powerful things that we talked about is the small business offices or officers that exist inside of these agencies. What are some other marketing strategies or approaches when it comes to the government procurement space?
I would say, you know, if you're looking at any kind of bid online or proposal or, you know, RFP online, you definitely want to see who are the buying officers. Those are listed right in the solicitation. So you can see, you know, make a list. Who are the buyers in that agency? That's usually not on an agency's website, but usually you can find that in the solicitation. If they have pre-bid meetings, an opportunity to meet with the agency before you bid, that's an opportunity for you to meet with the agency, meet with the other bidders, so that you're connecting also with people in your community and people who are going to be bidding on this.
Yeah, don't be scared of your competition.
Right.
Like, you should be paying very close attention to them. And if the more that you know them, if you're meeting them at an event, and like, go seek out the people that do what you do.
Yeah.
Don't avoid them. Because then you can take a look at their marketing materials. You can look at how they're presenting themselves.
Right.
And if you get to know them and then you see them win contracts, like, okay, well, there's some sort of a recipe for success in there somewhere. What did they do? And then you can reference back like, oh, they had this big banner up at a table. They were actually hosting a table at this event, you know,
Right.
whatever the case is.
Exactly. So you want to meet your competitors to understand them better, and also maybe even make a connection as a subcontractor, right? Maybe they're bidding on this project that may be too large for you. Right. You shouldn't shut yourself out from it. Go to the pre-bid meeting and see if you can become a part of that project as a sub.
And that's an important thing that I think people new to the government contracting space aren't necessarily familiar with, is that there are pre-bid meetings. And that's frequent, if not always the case.
Yeah, it's frequent, especially if you're going to be on site. They sometimes want you to see the space, or if they just have a pre-bid meeting virtually where they want to just answer questions. You know, that's a great way also to meet with the agency, build those connections with them.
100%. Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah.
Sarah, what else do you got?
She's like, when is this over? I think we covered.
Yeah, I think we nailed it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was great.
Yay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.